"We already signed the papers, Dad. The nursing home expects you on Monday, so just sign the transfer deed and stop making this harder than it needs to be." My son, Brandon, didn't even look up from his tablet as he tossed a black ballpoint pen onto the kitchen table. It rolled past my cold coffee mug and bounced off my wedding ring. I was 61 years old, sitting in the home I built with my own hands, watching my children divide my life like vultures over a fresh carcass. Before we uncover the dark secret hidden inside my lawyer's locked cabinet, take 5 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like mine find the light. The air in the kitchen felt suffocatingly heavy. My daughter, Alyssa, was already walking through the hallways, placing bright pink sticky notes on the furniture. A pink note on the oak grandfather clock, a pink note on the leather armchair. "Alyssa, please," I whispered, my voice cracking as I touched my late wife's wedding ring on my finger. "Your mother passed away only 6 months ago. This house is all I have left of her." "Dad, be realistic," Alyssa sighed, slapping a sticky note onto the refrigerator. "The medical bills from Mom's cancer treatment wiped you out. You can't afford the property taxes. Brandon and I are clearing your debts out of the goodness of our hearts. You should be thanking us." "I never asked you to clear my debts," I said, staring at the transfer deed on the table. Brandon clicked his tongue sharply. "You didn't have to ask, Dad. The bank sent the foreclosure warning to the house. We intercepted it. If we don't sell this place to a developer by Friday, we all get nothing. Now sign." I picked up the pen. My hand shook violently. I looked at the signature line, then down at the bottom of the page. Something caught my eye. The buyer's name wasn't a corporate real estate developer. The listed buyer was an LLC registered under an address I recognized instantly, Alyssa's suburban townhouse. "I need a few days to look this over," I said, dropping the pen. Brandon's face darkened. He snapped his tablet shut and stood up over the table to look down at me. "We don't have a few days, Dad. Sign it now or we walk away. If we walk, the bank takes the house on Monday and you'll be sleeping in your car. Choose wisely." "I said no, Brandon." Alyssa marched back into the kitchen, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood. "Fine. If you want to be stubborn, enjoy the silence. Come on, Brandon. Let him see how lonely this house gets without us." They stormed out, slamming the heavy front door so hard the glass rattled in the frame. I sat alone in the dark kitchen for an hour, watching the shadows grow long on the floorboards. My phone buzzed on the counter. It wasn't a text from my children apologizing. It was an automated alert from my email, an alert from a local storage facility. Overdue balance reminder, Unit 404. I blinked. I didn't own a storage unit. My wife, Sarah, had handled all our bills before the hospital took her away. I clicked the attached invoice. The account was under Sarah's name, but the secondary contact listed was someone named Thomas Vance. Thomas Vance was my estranged older brother, a man I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. The next morning, the winter air bit at my face as I drove my rusty pickup truck to the edge of the city. The storage facility was a bleak row of corrugated steel doors. I showed my ID and Sarah's death certificate. He cut the padlock off Unit 404 with a pair of bolt cutters. The metal door shrieked as I rolled it up. Inside, there was no furniture, no old clothes. Just a single, heavy green military footlocker sitting in the center of the concrete floor. I knelt down, the dust coughing up around my jeans. The trunk belonged to my brother Thomas from his time in the Navy. It was locked with a heavy combination dial. I tried my birthday, nothing. I tried Sarah's birthday, nothing. Then I tried the date of the day Thomas and I had our final explosive argument 15 years ago, the day he disappeared from our lives completely. Click. The lock gave way. I lifted the heavy lid.
Inside lay dozens of neatly organized manila folders, medical charts, and a stack of old ledger books. On top of the pile was a photograph of my wife, Sarah, sitting in a hospital gown, smiling alongside a man in a white lab coat. But the man in the lab coat wasn't her oncologist. It was Brandon's current business partner, Dr. Robert Aris. My phone rang, shattering the silence of the storage unit. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Arthur, is that you?" A strained, breathless voice came through the speaker. "Who is this?" I asked, gripping the edge of the metal trunk.
"It's Thomas," the voice whispered. "My brother." He sounded weak, his breath rattling in his chest. "I know you hate me, Arthur. You have every right to. But you need to listen to me very carefully. Are you at the house?" "No, I'm at the storage unit. Thomas, what is this? Why did Sarah have a locker with your name on it? Why is there a photo of her with Brandon's partner?" A heavy gasp came from the other end of the line. "Thank God you found it. Arthur, Sarah didn't die from the cancer. The treatment was working. I was checking the hospital records from my clinic out west. Brandon knew about the insurance policy." "What insurance policy?" My heart stopped. "Sarah didn't have life insurance. We canceled it years ago to pay for Brandon's college tuition." "She didn't cancel it, Arthur. She transferred ownership of the policy to a private trust. Brandon found out. He and Aris, they altered her medication charts to make it look like her liver failed from chemotherapy. They liquidated the trust the day after her funeral. The house foreclosure, it's a lie. They need the house deed because the property sits on top of the original trust documents Sarah hid in the wall safe." The line went completely dead. I shouted Thomas's name into the phone, but there was nothing but static. I drove back to the house like a madman, the truck engine roaring. My mind was spinning. My own son, my daughter. It felt like an impossible, twisted nightmare. When I pulled into the driveway, my heart dropped. Brandon's luxury SUV was parked on the grass. Alyssa's car was right behind it. I crept up to the side porch, my boots crunching softly on the snow. The kitchen window was cracked open an inch to let out the steam from the radiator. I leaned close, holding my breath. "He's at the storage place, I'm telling you," Alyssa's sharp voice cut through the cold air. "The clerk called my phone because I'm listed as the emergency contact on the main account. He knows Brandon. He's going to find the ledger." "He doesn't know anything," Brandon snapped back, the sound of ice clinking in a glass following his words. "The old man can barely figure out his smartphone. Even if he reads the ledger, he doesn't have the legal files. Mr. Harrison has those locked away at the firm. By the time Dad figures out how to hire a lawyer, the house will be demolished and the trust assets will be safely transferred to the Cayman account." "What about Uncle Thomas?" Alyssa whispered. "He's been digging around the hospital database." "Thomas is in a hospice facility 3 states away, hooked up to oxygen tank," Brandon sneered. "He's not doing anything. Tomorrow morning, we file the emergency guardianship papers. The judge will sign off on Dad's mental incompetence, and we take control of everything legally. It's over." I stepped back from the window. My chest felt tight, a wild, roaring fire igniting in my veins. The guilt I had carried for months, the feeling that I was a financial burden to my children, shattered into 1,000 pieces. They hadn't been trying to save me. They had been trying to bury me. I didn't confront them. I didn't walk through the front door screaming. I got back into my truck, backed out of the driveway quietly, and drove directly into the downtown business district. I pulled up outside the glass tower of Harrison and Associates, the oldest legal firm in the county. Mr. Harrison had been our family lawyer for 30 years. He was the man who drew up our first mortgage, the man who held our family secrets. I walked into the lobby,
the green military footlocker clutched tightly in my arms. The receptionist looked up, surprised by my disheveled appearance, my coat covered in snow and dust. "Arthur, do you have an appointment?" she asked softly. "No, Claire. I need to see Marcus immediately." "I'm sorry, Arthur. Mr. Harrison is in a high-profile board meeting with the senior partners. He can't be disturbed." "Tell him it's about Sarah's hidden file," I said, my voice echoing across the marble lobby. "Tell him the vultures are in the nest." 2 minutes later, the heavy oak doors of the inner office opened. Marcus Harrison, a tall man with silver hair and a sharp tailored suit, walked out. He looked at the green trunk in my hands, then at the fierce look in my eyes. He didn't ask questions. He simply gestured toward his private office. "Bring it in, Arthur," he said gravely. Marcus closed the door and locked it. He didn't sit behind his desk. He walked over to a heavy biometric safe built into the wall, pressed his thumb against the glass scanner, and pulled out a thick, leather-bound folder with my name on it. He laid it on the table next to my brother's military footlocker. "I've been waiting for you to come in, Arthur," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "Sarah came to see me 3 weeks before she passed away. She knew what Brandon and Alyssa were doing. She knew about the medical manipulation."
"Why didn't she tell me?" I yelled, the tears finally breaking free, scalding my cheeks. "Why did she leave me in the dark?" "Because she was trying to protect you," Marcus said, opening the leather folder. "Brandon had threatened to ruin your reputation. He had forged your name on several fraudulent business loans under your teaching credential. If Sarah went to the police, you would have gone down with them. She spent her final weeks gathering proof to insulate you completely." He flipped open the first page of the file. It wasn't a standard will. It was a comprehensive forensic report compiled by a private investigator. Attached to the back were hundreds of pages of bank statements, certified wire transfers, and a signed confession from Dr. Aris's former head nurse, detailing exactly how Sarah's medication had been altered during her final stay at the clinic. "There's more," Marcus said, pulling out a final sealed document. "The house isn't facing foreclosure, Arthur. The bank letters Brandon showed you were high-quality forgeries. Sarah paid off the entire mortgage 10 years ago using an inheritance from her grandmother. The property is worth $1.2 million today because of the commercial rezoning. Your children wanted to buy it from you for pennies under their fake LLC, demolish it, and pocket the cash before the state discovered the fraud." "What do we do now?" I asked, wiping my face, the old, tired schoolteacher completely vanishing inside me. "They are filing for emergency guardianship tomorrow morning to declare me insane." Marcus smiled, a cold, dangerous expression that showed why he was the top estate lawyer in the state. "They can file whatever they want. We are calling an emergency family meeting right here, tonight. Tell them you're ready to sign the house over." At 7 p.m., the snow was falling heavily outside the high-rise windows of the law firm. Brandon and Alyssa walked into the conference room, both of them wearing smug, victorious smiles. They saw me sitting at the end of the long mahogany table. They didn't notice Marcus Harrison standing in the shadows near the window. "Glad you finally came to your senses, Dad," Brandon said, tossing his leather briefcase onto the table. "Marcus, good to see you. Let's get this deed transfer notarized so we can all go home." "Sit down, Brandon, Alyssa," Marcus said smoothly, stepping into the light. Alyssa frowned, looking around the room. "Why is it so dark in here? Let's just sign the papers. We have a dinner reservation at 8. "You might want to cancel that reservation," I said, leaning forward, placing my hands flat on the table. Brandon laughed, a dry, mocking sound. "What, are you going to give us a lecture, Dad? With what authority? You have no money, no assets, and by next week, your name won't even be on the mailbox. Just sign the paper." Marcus didn't speak. He reached over to a laptop on the side desk and pressed a button. A large, flat-screen television on the wall flickered to life.
An audio file began to play. It was the exact conversation I had overheard through the kitchen window just hours ago. Alyssa's voice filled the room. "I'm telling you, he's at the storage place. He's going to find the ledger." Then Brandon's voice. "The old man can barely figure out his smartphone. We file the emergency guardianship papers." Alyssa froze, her face turning an ash-gray color. Brandon stood up so fast, his chair tipped over backward, crashing against the carpet. "This is illegal!" Brandon shouted, his eyes darting toward the door. "You recorded us without our consent. That's inadmissible in court." "In a criminal trial, perhaps, but this isn't a courtroom yet, Brandon, and we don't need the audio to ruin you. Let's talk about the medical fraud records from Dr. Aris's clinic. Let's talk about the $400,000 life insurance trust you liquidated. And let's talk about the federal identity theft charges for forging your father's signature on commercial loans." Marcus dropped a stack of certified financial documents onto the mahogany table. The loud thud sounded like a gavel striking a block. "Dad, please!" Alyssa suddenly gasped, her voice completely changing from arrogant to terrified. She dropped to her knees beside my chair, grabbing my arm. "Brandon made me do it. He told me we were just protecting your money from taxes. I didn't know about Mom's medication. I swear to God I didn't know." "Shut up, Alyssa," Brandon yelled, his hands shaking as he reached for his briefcase. "They have nothing. It's an old file. Aris handled everything at the clinic." "Dr. Aris was arrested 2 hours ago at his private residence, Brandon," Marcus said quietly, checking his watch. "He's already cooperating with the state prosecutor to lessen his own sentence. I suggest you sit down." Brandon's briefcase slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud. He looked at me, the arrogance completely draining from his eyes, leaving behind the small, cowardly boy he had always been under his expensive clothes. "Dad," Brandon whispered, his lips trembling, "you wouldn't do this to us. We're your children. Mom wouldn't want this. She loved us." "Your mother loved you enough to try to save you from your own greed, but you didn't love her, and you didn't love me. You loved her death, and you loved my ruin." The door to the conference room opened. 2 state detectives in plain clothes stepped inside, followed by a pair of uniformed officers. "Brandon Vance? Alyssa Vance?" the lead detective asked. Alyssa began to scream, clutching my knees, begging me to tell the officers it was a joke. I gently reached down, untangled her fingers from my trousers, and stood up. I walked past them, toward the glass windows, looking out at the city lights. The sound of metal handcuffs clicking echoed through the quiet office, followed by the quiet, desperate weeping of my daughter as she was led down the hallway. Brandon didn't make a sound. He just marched out, his head bowed, his expensive shoes clicking softly against the floor until the sound faded completely into the elevator shaft. It has been nearly a year since that night in Marcus Harrison's office. The trial never happened. Faced with the overwhelming evidence gathered by my wife and the confession of Dr. Aris, both Brandon and Alyssa pled guilty to conspiracy to commit grand larceny, financial exploitation of the elderly, and insurance fraud. Brandon was sentenced to 12 years in a federal facility. Alyssa received 7. My brother Thomas passed away peacefully 3 months ago in his hospice care, but before he went, we spent 3 weeks talking on the phone every single day, healing the wounds of a 15-year silence. He died knowing we were a family again. I still live in the house. I tore down every single pink sticky note my daughter had placed on the walls. The oak grandfather clock still ticks loudly in the hallway. The leather armchair is still right where it belongs. Sometimes, when the house gets too quiet, I sit at the kitchen table with Sarah's wedding ring and Thomas's military ledger. I don't feel anger when I think of my children. I just feel a quiet, empty grief for the paths they chose to walk. My children thought I had nothing left. They thought an old man was a fragile creature they could push into a corner and forget. But they forgot that a tree's strength doesn't come from its leaves. It comes from the roots hidden deep in the earth. I survived their storm, and in the quiet aftermath, I finally found my peace.